Okay, I am so excited for today's guest. She is so many things, a dear friend, most importantly, but I would love to welcome Maria Eilersen. She is a conscious PR coach, a visibility mentor, a writer, a yoga teacher, and a certified tapping practitioner. Welcome to Love Through It, Maria. Thank you for being here.
So much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I was so excited to have you on because I feel like at the core, you and I do very similar things. You know, we wear different hats doing it, but we both really bring people back to their center, really encourage them to be themselves and love themselves. And you just have a really fascinating story and so many amazing tools and offerings that what I'm finding with this podcast is that with, I started with health with all this, right? Like people really come to me because they don't feel well. But at the core, when I keep stripping away what I do and why I do it, it's nice to feel good and be healthy. But the point of having this meat suit that works is so we can go and have these lives that we love. So I also love just having really inspiring guests on who are doing things differently, that are doing things their own way. And you are very much doing that. So let's just jump in. I would love a little bit of background about what brought you here to Lisbon, what gave you all these amazing tools. I would love to hear a bit about your journey.
Of course, I would love to share. I'm just like asking myself, where do I start? Where does my story even begin? I don't know. I mean, the fact that I'm in Lisbon is probably starts with the fact that I grew up abroad. Like I'm a third culture kid. So I'm originally from Denmark, despite what you might think with my very American accent. And hopped around. I lived in Japan. I lived in Canada, Denmark, Italy, and then as an adult in New York and London. And so I'm always, I always joke that I have commitment issues when it comes to locations. So I'm like, I'm here now. And came to Lisbon during the pandemic because, I wanted to be chasing the sunshine and be somewhere that's closer to the sea. But I mean, thanks to that upbringing, it was obviously amazing and it was such a privilege in so many ways, but it was also challenging being the new kid all the time, also when you are young. And so I think that and, other things put me on this personal development path quite young. I've always joked that it's been like my number one hobby. And
that's why we get along. That's why we get along.
Yes, exactly. And I think like with going and living in all these different cultures and countries, like I had to learn to adapt and like read the culture and figure out how do I belong? How do I fit in? And I think then as an adult, my unlearning has been kind of figuring out like, what is me and what is all these like masks I learned to put on? And so it's been this journey of like finding my own authentic expression and allowing my authentic self to be seen. And it doesn't feel like a coincidence then that my career path ended up in PR, which is about like helping other people be seen. And so that's kind of where the two merge. So I feel like that's kind of the long story short version of how I got to where I am and how my past influenced that.
And you've been incredibly helpful to me. I mean, we met each other because I hired you. I did your conscious PR program. And it was really empowering, right? And I would love for you to explain, you have a very different approach to PR than a lot of people and just a different way of looking at it and thinking about it. And I'd love to hear how you got to that, right? And maybe a little bit about what you do in that arena.
Yeah, of course. I mean, how did I get to that point? I think being in the industry for a long time, there are certain things that I didn't like about it. So that when I started my own business, I was like, well, I don't want to do a lot of these things. And I think being a yoga teacher, integrity is a really big value of mine. And after I did my yoga teacher training, I was like, okay, I want to do things that are meaningful and I want to have an impact in a positive way. And so when I revisited PR, I was like, I need to bring these values into that. And so what I end up talking about a lot, like the difference between conscious PR and maybe what you call traditional, normal, what I say is performative PR, is that performative or normal PR is kind of from the outside in. It's like, what do people want to hear? How do we put a spin on our messaging, on our marketing in a way that it like lands with the people we want to connect with? But it's maybe not actually grounded in proof and integrity. It's like where we get all the greenwashing, the rainbow washing, versus when it's conscious, it's coming from the inside out. It's looking at like, what are my actual values? What are the things that really set me apart? What is it that really is my unique flavor of expertise? And like, what really is, what's how I add value, and taking that and amplifying that, and then letting that be the message and what steers the communication. And also it means that you're not really having to worry about like crisis communication and stuff like that, because you're not trying to be something that you're not. And it feels a lot better. And I also I know it lands better because it's actually authentic. And that is so magnetic and really cuts through the noise. Like people can feel the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It was really interesting starting to work with you because we really had to answer a lot of hard questions around and like really look within in terms of like, what do we care about? What are we passionate about? What makes us different? What stands out? And it was that exercise alone, I feel like was worth all of it, really like looking internally. And it's funny because with social media, right? Especially like even TikTok, one step past Instagram, authenticity has become such a big deal. Mm-hmm. In terms of how we present ourselves. Like that's what people, people have a better bullshit indicator, it feels like these days, where it's, and it was really liberating, right? Because you think about, pitching yourself to journalists or just, as someone who has a small business, I think a lot of women especially, it's like, oh, I don't want to be too loud, or I don't want to, like promoting yourself feels so gross, like, or to me at least,
yes.
that it's
was like, who am I? Who am I to call myself an expert? Who am I to take up space?
Right. And you did such a beautiful job of empowering us to be like, no, through your story and your experience, and like just lead with that. And that's so liberating.
Yes. Yes. It's that you are an expert on your experience. And as long as you're not pretending to be something you're not, like, it's okay. Like, it's like saying there are a lot of people who can comment as a mental health, quote unquote, expert. That doesn't mean you have to be a therapist. And as long as you're upfront about that, to be like, hey, I'm not a therapist. Like, but for example, I do tapping. And so I can talk about it from that lens, like through that lens. And that doesn't mean I'm going to like pretend that I can claim certain things that a therapist could, but I can offer a different point of view. And as long as I'm transparent about where I'm coming from, it's still valuable insight because it's a conversation and we need to hear from different points of view.
And so what inspired you to become a yoga teacher?
I mean, it was one of those things that like, I feel like was staring me in the face that I just like ignored. Like I first started practicing yoga when I was like 17. My mom took me to my first class when I was living in Tokyo. I was like an angsty teenager, as we all were. And I just kept going because it made me feel good. I like didn't understand it really. It was just like a movement practice that felt good as opposed to like other exercise, like other movement types. And then it just became the staple in my life that I think I really took for granted. But like whenever I was going through a hard time, if I like lost a job or like moved to a new place or something, I would like do that, intro offer that studios would have and do like the unlimited. It would be the thing that would get me out of the house every day and go to a class. And then it was when I was 27, I lost my corporate PR job. I used to head up PR for like a big multi-million-dollar company. And I at the time was like, well, on my resume, I can't have a gap in my resume saying I went on a yoga retreat. It's going to look better if I do a yoga teacher training because that I can justify. Like the internalized capitalism was so real.
Oh my God. You're like, God forbid I take a break.
God forbid I take a break. Yeah, no, I can't justify that. It needs to be, it needs to be productive. So I signed up for a yoga teacher training and I wanted to do it abroad. So I went to Guatemala because I really just wanted to travel. And it was the classic, like, oh, I'm just doing it to deepen my practice. I don't actually want to teach. And then obviously you go through this like huge transformational experience. And I came out the other side really realizing that like teaching is actually now a big part of my practice and also has become a really important part of my own journey in terms of like allowing myself to be seen in my authenticity because teaching, you can't memorize a script. Like you have to show up as you and like roll with the punches of like, if you forget something or like someone does something or whatever, you have to just really like trust yourself in the present and allow yourself to be seen when you mess up left and right, like crack a joke or like whatever, like you really learn to trust yourself and be seen as like I feel like quite vulnerably. So it's been a really powerful part of my I guess, journey to being seen and helping other people be seen too. But it was never something I planned to do. Like, oh, I want to be a yoga teacher. It was very much like I said, a way to fill my resume at the time, which I'm so glad I had that incentive.
And how did deepening your yoga practice, did it change your relationship to your body?
Oh my God, in so many ways. I really do think that yoga helped me appreciate my body and build a better relationship to it. I mean, it took a long time. And in the beginning, which I share with a lot of my students now, like I was all ego of like pushing myself into the poses, doing the like quote unquote advanced expression, not realizing that like if it's restricting and painful, like it probably is not where you should go. But I'm like, no, but I can do it. You know, I mean, I literally popped a hamstring. I pulled a hamstring in a yoga class standing still when I was like 22. So I think it like initially maybe brought that like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like that criticism and that like just how hard I was being on my body and how much I was expecting of it to the surface. Like when I popped my hamstring, it was kind of like, what are you doing? Like, you don't need to prove anything. This is not benefiting just because you can bind. Like, why are you doing that? Like, start listening to your body. Actually listen to what the yoga teachers are saying and actually listen to your body. And so I think, yeah, it's shown me in so many ways what my body is capable of that I didn't realize was possible. Like I have a handstand practice now, which I never in my life thought was possible. And it's really come from like, yeah, letting go of attaching to certain outcomes and expecting all this of my body instead just like choosing to listen and celebrate all the things that it can do and that it does do for me without me even needing to ask, you know?
Yeah, I always talk about my clients, right, where, you know, I have these non-negotiables and I have these 6 questions I ask people when things are out of alignment and we don't know why, right? When you start feeling poorly and it's like getting people to really understand A, what works for their body, and then B, trying to pull us back with these different practices that we have. And the third question, it's always like, am I getting enough sleep is the first one. Because when you're not consistently, your brain starts telling you crazy things. Oh my God, right?
Yes.
And actually the second one, I always ask people, are you moving your body in ways that bring you joy consistently? And I really, because as someone who I had an eating disorder, I was so hard on my body as an actress, as a model. I was so mean for so many years. And exercise was like a form of punishment. I think a lot of us have that. And I dislocated a rib in my 20s doing yoga, like twisting too much. Cause I was like, I used to be able to do this.
It sounds insane when you say it out loud. Like that's not what's meant to happen. Like the amount of force that goes into that.
It's crazy. It's like you're just beating your body into submission. And for me, when I got really sick in my 20s, I had a lot of fatigue issues and I was not allowed to exercise for an entire year. And someone who had an eating disorder and then had obviously some sort of like exercise eating disorder combined with that, it really freaked me out. But in that year of healing, I realized that like exercise for me went from something that I forced myself to do to look good, right? Like something I had to do to look good and transformed into something I really wanted to do to feel good. And like you're sort of also talking about that practice where it was this head space versus this like, ooh, how do I listen to my body and do stuff that makes me feel really good? Yeah. So I like to always bring that up because I think a lot of people, again, going back to productivity and it's like you go to SoulCycle or you lift these weights or you exercise 5 times a week and you don't even, it's like, no. What is your relationship to it? What does it do for you? What does your body need that day? And like the ability to just check in and listen and have these practices that, make you stronger and maybe, obviously make your heart healthier, your body healthier, but you come out of it feeling better and whole and listening. Yeah. And like yoga is such a beautiful practice for that.
And I mean, it feels so much better when you're coming at it from that point of view, instead of coming at it like, I have to do this. Like it's a chore or it's a punishment, like you said. Like I was the same when it came to exercise and movement because I also had an eating disorder and I also like was so hard on my body. To actually shifting it to being like, no, movement feels good. It can feel good. And if you choose a movement practice that like you enjoy, it's also way more sustainable. You don't have to like push yourself. You don't have to fight. Like you don't have to fight against yourself to do it because you're just like, even if in the moment you're like, okay, I feel a little bit tired, but because you know how much better you're going to feel, you will just, there's no discipline involved. It's just like desire. Like that's what I talk about like people, I don't know. That's one of my pet peeves. People being like, discipline, discipline, discipline. I'm like, no, if you truly like will feel better doing something, like when it comes to movement, for example, you don't need to be disciplined because your desire will lead you there, because your desire to feel good, if it's strong enough. So you don't, so then the discipline just naturally comes, because discipline just feels so like, I don't know. It feels like that chore, that like rigid, that like punishment, which I'm just not about anymore.
It absolutely, I mean, it goes back to restrictive eating or anything like that. Like anytime you're telling your body you have to do this thing, or like I have to push through, or it's got to be hard or hurt or whatever, you're going to rebel, right? Like you can do anything for a limited amount of time, but if you're calorie restricting, if you're like beating your body into submission, doing exercise you don't like, you're going to get to a point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. And I'm the same way. It's like with everything I tell people, I'm like, how do we love everything that we're bringing into our life? Like, how do we navigate it in ways that feel really good to us? And I truly believe that like everything within your control as much as possible, can you start to negotiate and bring things in that just light you up and make you feel really good?
Yeah. Like follow what feels good.
Yeah.
And like people have this idea that like, oh, but if I allow myself to follow what feels good, I'm going to do really destructive things. And it's like, well, no, because destructive things they maybe feel good for a little while, but then they're not going to feel good. So then you're going to actually change and follow what really feels good, which is like getting better sleep or eating better or whatever.
Absolutely. It's like, I know you like Martha Beck as much as I do.
Yes.
She always talks about when she does coaching with people, she's like, picture your ideal life. And she's like, everyone's wearing white in this for some reason. And like every woman is just like reading a book on the beach, and every guy is just like owning a bar on the beach. And she's like, and then after that, I'm like, and then what? And they're like, that's it. And she's like, okay, so you laid on the beach for 2 weeks, for 2 weeks straight. You'd want to do something after that, right? So it's like, even like people get so afraid. It's like, no, I'll never do anything again. It's like, no, get drunk for 2 weeks or lay down and do nothing for 2 weeks. All of a sudden you're going to be inspired to do these other things. And usually, right, no matter what it is, like you're going to want to do something that makes you feel better, because like your body wants to heal itself by itself. Like your brain wants to be happy when given the opportunity.
Yes, exactly.
Tapping is something that's newer to me. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear your journey sort of into it, and just explain to our audience, because I know a lot of people don't really I understand it, but I could understand it better. I know we'll do a bit of a tapping at the end, but I'd love to also talk about like just first understand what it is, and then how you bring it into your PR and visibility coaching.
Yeah, of course. So tapping is also known as EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And I believe it's been around since the 80s, something like that. And it's like a blend of Chinese medicine, because it's based on acupuncture points in the meridians in the body, and also cognitive behavioral theory. So it kind of like merges like modern psychology with this like ancient practice.
I did not know that.
Which is that's really cool, you know? So it's also cool. That classic thing of like, we're going to look at these ancient practices and we're like, you know, we're not going to take it seriously until modern science comes in and like verifies it. But modern science has come in and verified it. So like they've actually traced the meridians in the body with like dye. So like they're real, which, you know, Chinese medicine has known always. And essentially what you're doing is you're tapping on these, you're literally tapping your body on these different acupuncture points, which correspond to different parts of the brain. And you are calming down your nervous system. You're like interrupting the stress response, and you're looking at a feeling or a belief or a thought that you want to shift. And so by tapping on it, you are actually interrupting that stress response and literally lowering your cortisol level. So you're telling your body, your system, that it is safe. Like it is not something it needs to be scared of. It's not something it needs to react to. And that's what then allows you to shift it. And if it's successful, if the tapping is successful, you will literally forget that you felt that feeling, or that you will forget the intensity of the feeling, because tapping allows you to create new neural pathways in the brain. So it quite literally will rewire your brain. So it stops firing the neural pathway towards, like, I don't know, let's say you're anxious about something, because you show the nervous system that it's safe to not be anxious and that it's safe. It'll stop firing in that direction. And so you'll literally forget. Which is one of the challenges with tapping, is that like when it's effective, people like forget how much they were suffering before when it is effective. But that's also kind of one of the really cool things about it, that it can shift things so dramatically, so instantly also. So anyone listening, if you wanted to just like bring it in as a daily practice or into your life, like if you are in a situation where you're feeling anxious, you can choose any one of the points. I like to recommend the one underneath the collarbone, and you can just tap there. I do it when I'm flying. If I have a bit of a fear of flying, and tapping has really helped me. I can just tap under the collarbone, be like, oh, I feel really anxious, but like I know I'm safe, and I just tap, and it will calm down your like fight flight response, which is really cool, and it has an instant impact. And then because when you combine it with the cognitive behavioral theory of like thoughts become your feelings, become your actions, you can use it as a way to like acknowledge limiting beliefs, challenge those limiting beliefs, and insert new ones. And because you're also working with like the meridians and the brain, it's gonna like rewire things in your brain on a deeper level than if you were just to say the affirmations without tapping. So it's just a way to take affirmations deeper as well. So you can quite literally shift your state. And so what we say with tapping is that usually one of two things happen. Like you either change how you feel, or you change how you feel about how you feel. So like sometimes something might be a bit of a stronger layer. Like let's say you're feeling like fear or anxiety, or like, I don't know, we kind of look at issues as like an onion. So each tapping session, you'll peel back the layers of the onion. So maybe you're feeling really anxious about something, but you're also being really judgmental about it. So maybe you might get to a point where maybe the anxiety is like, it's still there a little bit, but you're not judging and you're not resisting. And so as a result, you've shifted and it's like feeling better still. And then you could take it, you can do another round and go deeper.
You were the first like real introduction. I mean, I've been aware of it, and it's one of those things where people are like, oh, try this or, whatever. And there's so many things to do always.
Yes.
Especially when you get into like health and wellness stuff. But yeah, I had never done an actual tapping session with you, and I've done a couple at this point. And I really had no expectations, right? With all of these things, I try to keep a really open mind because, some things work really well for some people and don't for others. And I was shocked, even because we did it in sort of a group setting, and then we've done it privately. And both times I've had, quite a big shift and sort of enough of a relief that it felt like maybe like a really great therapy session or, some sort of nice like trauma healing session where it was like moving through a lot of heavy emotions and then like feeling really peaceful afterwards. So like I can attest to, at least she knows what she's doing. I don't know about the rest of them.
But it is powerful because it's somatic. So I think that's the other, it obviously engages your mind because you're talking, but it also shifts things physically. And so I think that's why it's such a beautiful combination. And I also love it because I find it's really accessible. Because it's not like if you're, meditation can be quite inaccessible if you're someone who's really anxious or has a lot of racing thoughts. To just like close your eyes.
Resistant.
Yeah, right. Like that can feel really scary. Whereas with this, it's like, no, we're not going to bypass your feeling. We're going to acknowledge the feeling. And actually that's the only way it works. It's like we're going to actually look at your feeling, amplify the feeling, and then shift it. So it gives you like something to do about the feeling, which I think can be quite supportive for a lot of people, even people who have a hard time feeling their feelings. Like some of my sessions are literally that, where I will kind of intuitively feel like what needs to happen here is that they need to give themselves permission to feel their feeling, and then they'll feel better. Like the problem here is not the feeling. It's like all their thoughts about the feeling and how they're making themselves wrong for having the feeling, instead of it being like, you're human, you're going to have a feeling and it's not going to last forever. Love yourself through it, and that's had to bring that in. And that's what's so beautiful about tapping is like, that's kind of the key phrase. Like in every session I do is like, you acknowledge however you're feeling and you go, even though I feel X, or even though I'm doing this, or even though I believe whatever, Y, I still deeply and completely love, accept, and forgive myself. And it's that like radical love and acceptance that also is such a powerful shift, because again, loving yourself through it doesn't mean just loving all the things that are like easy to love, that are nice and like attractive. It's like also loving the parts of you that are frustrating and difficult and painful. But if you can do that, you can really also shift and heal on a deeper level.
So how do you personally use it? Is it like part of your morning practice? Do you use it when you're anxious or you're flared up? Like or do people use it differently? What's sort of recommended?
I mean, I think it's very much up to the person, how you want to use it. I love using it as part of my morning routine, but I can also use it like if there's an issue that comes up, like when I've been going through like spurts of growth and challenges, I'm like overthinking something, or I want to shift how I think about something. Once I've journaled and I feel like I'm clear on what it is, I will like do like self-guided practices. But then I also like sometimes in the morning will just, if I'm like, oh, I want to feel this, I will like put on a video, or I'll do like one of my own recordings, or just do a self-guided one on like how I want to feel. Because that's usually in every session. It's like, what are you struggling with and how do you actually want to leave the session feeling? And then that's what we look at. And you can do, like 5 minutes can be really powerful. But if you want to work on like some deeper stuff, then having like a one-on-one session allows you to go deeper. So it's kind of like the difference between making it a daily practice of like, oh, I just kind of want to like work on confidence and self-love and these kind of more universal themes. That can be a really powerful thing to do on a daily basis. But then if there's like specific like issues that are unique to you, it's helpful to have like a weekly session with a practitioner where you can go deeper, because having someone else mirror stuff back to you is also really powerful. And I benefit from that too, that like there's only so much I can do on my own, because if I'm really caught up in like a way of thinking, it can be hard for me to see the reframe. And then having someone else reflect it back and have someone else like say it out loud also makes me realize like how ridiculous my thinking is. Like that's also the real power in having someone else to interact with, is like it kind of snaps you out of it a little bit faster. But then, like if I'm feeling a little bit anxious, like I will also just literally tap on whatever point I can reach. And that is also an instant way to release it.
So this can be a tool, you can use in an emergency, you can do it daily, and also you can get sort of some deeper healing from it. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I know you pair it with both. Can you talk a little bit about how I know you pair it with some of your yoga workshops, you pair it with your PR coaching. Talk a little bit more about that. I think that's really unique and interesting to what you do.
So I mean, because I've been using it myself since like, I think 2019. And again, one of those things that I like didn't really get credit. Same way with yoga. And then I decided to get certified. I was like, well, obviously I want to bring it into everything I do. I just naturally started offering it, like one in the group program that you did with me, to do it in a group setting, because that's another thing that's really interesting. When you do it in a group setting, it actually activates the mirror neurons. So it's something like if you're more than 8 people, it actually has a deeper effect, because you're all mirroring each other and you're doing the same thing. So that's why group settings can be really powerful. And so I naturally wanted to bring it in, because like with visibility, with PR, like I always say strategy is the easy part. But like believing you are worthy, being confident enough and being seen, like getting over the fears that come up, and like there's a lot that comes up when you are asked to be visible in a big way. It comes up with every single one of my clients. Like so much comes up. So
I mean, launching this podcast recently, it was like I could, like the week before, knowing I was going to do it, I started feeling like really a vulnerability hangover, like prematurely. And it's like, who am I to say these things? Who am I to? I don't know what I'm doing, and it's like, what? I've been doing this for like 10 years.
Exactly.
Almost. Like, you do. Like, what is that? But I had a business coach once. He was always talking about there's like no business problems and really no quote unquote relationship problems. They're all personal problems that affect your business or your relationship. And that's why I feel like I'm always drawn to more like holistic, with PR, with business, it's someone who's going to look at the fact that I'm this like highly sensitive, squishy person who feels all of the things. And if if she's feeling sad and scared on the inside, it's going to be really hard for her to like do anything on the outside.
But also anyone
acknowledge that.
Everyone feels that way too. Like that was the thing that I found so strange about being in the PR industry when I was in like at agencies and stuff. It's like, we put this briefing document together to the founders to go on like fucking BBC, but there would be no like acknowledgement of like, oh, what to do if you feel nervous? Like what to do if you like, it was just all like, here are the talking points. Here's like how you need to present yourself. Remember to smile, wear this, blah, blah, blah. But it's like mindset is such a big part of running a business. And I think especially if you're a conscious business owner, you're heart-centered and you're sensitive, like how you feel really impacts how you show up. And obviously naturally, like I'm very intuitive and I hold space for that naturally. but actually having a tool that I can use to really support people on a deeper level just made so much sense, because now it's like, okay, I can help you figure out what's blocking you, figure out what these limiting beliefs are, and then I can actually take you through this practice to help you shift it. You know, I cannot just make you aware, I can actually help you move through it and heal it, which feels really powerful. So now it's part of every one of my offers. Like I also offer in-person coaching. I have this in-person experience in Lisbon. And my last client who was here, like she walked away saying that actually the tapping we did together in person was part of the most profound transformation of the experience she had. Like that and the messaging, which we talked about before. But she was like, oh, I came to you for like press results, which I got, and like to make more money, which I did. But like, you also somehow helped me like heal my relationship with my mom, which I like did not expect. And I was like,
right.
So I'll lure you in with the press and like the flashy, like get into Vogue and New York Times. And actually I'm going to like trick you into healing your trauma.
That's exactly what I'm doing over here. I'm like, ooh, you think you like want to lose weight and you don't understand why your stomach hurts? Oh, come in here. I'm going to heal your relationship with your body and get you really connected to your purpose in life.
Yes.
We're so evil. We are so evil.
We're so evil.
But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. And I always talk about this with my clients as well. It's like, I truly, truly believe, and I'm sure you and I have talked about this, that there is only one step at a time revealed on your journey, right? There's only one next right thing. And that thing, if you actually, you know, go for it, you embrace it, you really honor what's happening and you do the next right scary thing, you listen to yourself or you move through the trauma or you ask for what you need, that is going to positively affect every area of your life, right? So the fact that she came to you because she wanted to move things forward with her business and all of this other stuff got positively affected, that's no surprise. Because if you really are listening and honoring your own journey, like that's what happens. And even when you were saying this before, you brought up your in-person experience, which is such a brilliant idea. And like, I followed her whole journey on Instagram. I was like, damn, this looks beautiful. I'm like, if I didn't already live here. Yeah. But you know, what just popped into my brain was, I think part of what I got from your PR experience working with you was the balls to even do this podcast. And like, I've wanted to do this since my late 20s. I remember I recorded a couple of episodes in my late 20s that I never did anything with because I didn't feel like I had permission, right? I didn't feel like I was allowed. I was too afraid. And the biggest thing I got out of working with you last fall was like, yeah, to feel empowered and to sort of not care, right? To be like, okay, I'm going to connect to what I feel really called to do and what I feel really excited about. And I remember you had a journalist when Stacy came in and talked to us. There was something about that conversation too, where it was like, no, you're doing us a favor, right? Like we want what you have. Yes. And like everyone has something. And I think much beyond PR, I say this to my clients all the time, like every one of us has something really specific and unique and special that we need, that everyone else needs. And the funny thing about that too is I truly believe it's something that will really light you up and bring you joy and make you happy, right? So if you really can listen to yourself and slow down and take care of yourself and be brave enough to take those next right steps, that, you know, whatever it is that's going to light you up that you do is going to profoundly change the world and you're going to have a great time doing it.
Yeah. And I believe the same thing. I'm like, I think the world needs to hear from conscious entrepreneurs. Like you're doing the world a disservice by not sharing your unique point of view, because there are so many people taking up space who are like not experts, speaking out of turn. And you're like, oh, who am I? It's like the fact that you're even asking yourself that question means that you are going to be really conscious about what you say and what you comment on and be really like transparent about your credentials. But like, we need to hear from you. And also the fact that like, once you can step in and really own your magic and like what your unique gifts are, like that also really translates and people really pick up on it when it's coming from this genuine place. Like I have clients who show me emails from journalists that are like, oh, wow, this is so refreshing. Like they feel the difference also because it's not coming from some PR person who like hates their job and is like just saying what needs to be said and like trying to like get this client that has nothing to do with the topic that they're pitching into this publication because it's their job. It's like, no, I'm coming from this place of like, I'm really trying to help people. This is how I help people. I think this point of view is really important. And I'm going to share my insight with you as a journalist so that you can share it with other people. Like, it's coming from a place of service. You're not going, hey,
Yes.
write about how amazing I am and hire me.
Right.
It's going, hey, like, I have information about this issue that is affecting a lot of people. Like, let me share it with you as an expert and give you an idea and help you, and also help you do your job. That's what I always say to people. Like, the best approach to pitching a journalist is like, help them do their job. They need to come up with ideas. They need content.
Right. That's
help
so
them
true.
do their job. Yeah.
That's so true. So I would love to do a short tapping. I would love you to walk us through a tapping so everyone can, if they've never done it, have a first experience with you, and you're so fabulous at it. And also, you know, if you have, like, to have a little resource. So
let's do it.
And I know we talked a bit before this about self-love. So is that a fun thing or a nice idea to tap about?
Yeah, let's tap on it.
I'll leave it to you. I'll leave it to you.
No, I think that sounds good. Do you think what comes up for you, or maybe for your clients, around self-love? Like, any like resistance to it, anything that's like challenging around self-love? Because then we can incorporate that in.
Yeah, I think with a lot of people, you know, it's like the worthiness, it's the deservingness, it's allowing yourself to take the time, right? To take care of yourself, to be able to take up space, to ask for what you need, to slow down and listen and trust. That's a big one, right? It's hard to love yourself if you can't even be quiet and sit with yourself and listen to yourself. So there's like permission around there to, like, you know, understand that for you to be the best version of yourself, like, you have to sometimes just shut the world out and put yourself first. Like, I work with so many moms and, you know, or just so many people in relationships where they're giving, whether it's at work or at home or both. And, you know, women tend to put themselves second. Not that affects that. I mean, men do it too.
Yeah.
But that's one of the big things I see as a through line, and then come out burnt out, sick, exhausted, frustrated, you know, so really permission, right? Like the permission that needs to come with, like, taking the time to even love yourself and take care of yourself.
Yeah. And then what does self-love look like? What is the feeling that we want people to leave with?
I feel like, you know, for me, it's permission, it's peace. It can feel like joy. It can feel like getting out of the way. So that's such a great question. And I think it is different but yeah, when I think about it, it's like being at peace with myself, being content, sometimes maybe feeling proud of myself. Like, there's no more striving, where I can just sit and be and feel that, like, accepting everything as it is perfect in this moment.
I love that. Okay. I think maybe just because I know we have video going, but for anyone who's like listening without video, I'm just going to go through the points, because the way it goes is that we start by tapping on the side of the hand, and you just tap as if you were like tapping someone on the shoulder to like move out of the way. So you're not like beating yourself. It's a very delicate little tap. So that's called the setup point. So we'll start there, and I will verbally cue when we shift to what is called the full round. So once we've done the side of the hand, then we tap on the top of the head, and it'll be like one sentence, and then you repeat after me. And then after that, we'll move to the next point. So after top of the head, it's the inside of the eyebrows, and then the outside edges of the eyes, and then underneath the eyes, underneath the nose, underneath the mouth, and then under the collarbones, and then under the armpit. And you can do one hand, you can do both hands, and then it's the wrists. And then we just cycle through those. And I'm sure we can put them in the show notes too, if anyone wants to know what they are, if you're listening. But if you're watching on video, you can just follow along. Oh, and then also grab some water. So I'm going to take a sip of water before we get into this.
Water. Cheers.
Cheers. Because it is somatic and it is energetic work. So you always want to hydrate a lot when you're tapping.
Oh, that's a good note. That's a good note.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into it. So I always like to have everyone start by closing their eyes. So close your eyes, find a comfortable seat wherever you are, and just notice how you feel. Send yourself a breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. And just consider this idea of self-love. Notice what comes up for you. Maybe there are thoughts. Maybe there are physical sensations. Don't judge anything. Don't make anything right or wrong. Just become aware. And then I want you to rank yourself from a scale of 1 to 10 on where you fall when I say, you really love yourself. 10 is you really love yourself. 1 is hate, self-loathing. So just like rank yourself, the first number that comes to mind. It's just to check, and then hopefully on the other side of the tapping, that number will have shifted. And then when you feel ready, you blink the eyes open, and we'll start by tapping on the side of the hand. So, Liana, do you want to be my echo?
Yes.
Okay.
I would love to.
So I will, excuse me, just tap along and repeat after me. I'm ready to start really loving myself.
I'm ready to start really loving myself.
And I mean unapologetically.
And I mean unapologetically.
Unconditionally.
Unconditionally.
Not just loving the parts of myself that are easy to love.
Not just loving the parts of myself that are easy to love.
Loving all the messy, weird, awkward, cringeworthy parts too.
Loving all the messy, weird, awkward, cringeworthy parts too.
Because I know that I am deserving of that love.
Because I know I am deserving of that love.
Exactly as I am.
Exactly as I am.
Not when I reach XYZ milestone.
Not when I reach XYZ milestone.
Or X number on the scale.
Or X number on the scale.
But right now.
But right now.
And I may have some feelings about that.
And I may have some feelings about that.
I may have some resistance to really loving myself fully.
I may have some resistance to really loving myself fully.
I may not always have loved myself fully.
I may not have always loved myself fully.
And even though that's been the case.
And even though that's been the case.
And I maybe have some resistance to loving myself right now.
And I maybe have some resistance to loving myself right now.
I still deeply and completely.
I still deeply and completely.
Choose to love, accept, and forgive myself.
Choose to love, forgive, and accept myself.
Even if it's just opening the door to that possibility.
Even if it's just opening the door to that possibility.
And sticking my foot through the door of self-love.
And sticking my foot through the door of self-love.
I'm opening the door just a little bit.
I'm opening the door just a little bit.
And maybe with time.
And maybe with time.
Or by the end of this tapping.
Or by the end of this tapping.
I will have fully stepped through that door of self-love.
I will have fully stepped through that door of self-love.
Into a beautiful red, pink, sparkly cave of self-love.
Into a beautiful red, pink, sparkly cave of self-love. Hell yeah.
I am so open to that possibility.
I am so open to that possibility.
Because deep down, I know I am so worthy of love.
I know I am so worthy of love.
And I get to give it to myself.
And I get to give it to myself.
Okay, take a deep breath in. Let it go. Just take a moment to notice how you feel, if anything shifted. Has anything come up for you, Liana, that you want to add to our full round before we get into it? So much tenderness. That made me very emotional unexpectedly, because I do feel like I have a nice relationship with myself, but everything you were saying about loving the messy, cringy parts, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the stuff we try to hide, and allowing the unique, beautiful mess that is us. Like that to me is that hit home. Yeah. I also just want to add, I didn't mention this before. If you find yourself yawning, tearing up, burping, those are all signs that it's working. So don't be weirded out.
Oh, I was tearing up off and on.
That is totally normal. Okay. We're going to continue starting on the top of the head and then just follow the points around. It's time I stop denying myself.
It's time I stop denying myself.
It's time I stop setting conditions for loving myself.
It's time I stopped setting conditions for loving myself.
It's time I love myself fully.
It's time I love myself fully.
And I don't know why I have all this resistance to it.
And I don't know why I have all this resistance to it.
I don't know why it feels difficult.
I don't know why it feels difficult.
Maybe I had parents who made their love conditional.
Maybe I had parents that made their love conditional.
Or maybe I experienced difficult social situations as a kid.
Or maybe I experienced difficult social situations as a kid.
And learned that I wasn't welcome as I was.
And learned that I wasn't welcome as I was.
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
I know that that's simply not true.
I know that that's simply not true.
That anyone setting conditions on their love for me
That anyone setting conditions on their love for me
are probably setting conditions on loving themselves.
Are probably setting conditions on loving themselves.
And maybe that's what they were taught.
And maybe that's what they were taught.
So I'm letting go of this being personal.
So I'm letting go of this being personal.
I'm choosing to forgive myself for making those experiences mean I wasn't lovable.
I'm choosing to forgive myself for making the experiences mean I'm not lovable.
Because I know I'm lovable.
Because I know I'm lovable.
Deep down, exactly as I am.
Deep down, exactly as I am.
I don't need to change anything to be lovable.
I don't need to change anything to be lovable.
I can simply make the choice to love myself right now.
I can simply make the choice to love myself right now.
And I mean all of myself.
And I mean all of myself.
Maybe I can choose to see magic in all the parts of me that other people would find cringy.
Maybe I can choose to see magic in all the parts of me that others would find cringy.
Like I'm brave enough to be myself.
Like I'm brave enough to be myself.
I'm brave enough to try new things.
I'm brave enough to try new things.
I'm brave enough to open up my heart.
I'm brave enough to open up my heart.
I'm brave enough to have difficult conversations.
I'm brave enough to have difficult conversations.
I'm brave enough to be a beginner at something I want to try.
I'm brave enough to be a beginner at something I want to try.
I'm brave enough to show up on Instagram.
I'm brave enough to show up on Instagram.
I'm brave enough to do insert whatever cringy thing you're doing here.
I'm brave enough to insert whatever cringy thing I'm doing here. Start a podcast.
And I'm going to choose to celebrate that.
And I'm going to choose to celebrate that.
Because being cool is fucking boring anyway.
Because being cool is fucking boring anyway. Amen.
I'm going to embrace the cringe.
I'm going to embrace the cringe.
I'm going to celebrate the fuck out of my awkward.
I am going to celebrate the fuck out of my awkward.
Because my awkwardness is real.
Because my awkwardness is real.
And it's beautiful and true and authentic.
And it's beautiful and true and authentic.
And really, it just gives other people permission to do the same thing.
And really, it just gives other people permission to do the same thing.
So maybe I could choose to see me loving myself.
So maybe I could choose to see me loving myself.
As a service to the people around me.
As a service to the people around me.
Because the more I love myself.
Because the more I love myself.
The more I give other people permission to love themselves too.
The more I give other people permission to love themselves too.
All parts of them.
All parts of them.
So I'm going to let go of this story.
So I'm going to let go of this story.
That it is only okay for me to love myself.
That it is only okay for me to love myself.
When I do or achieve XYZ.
When I do or achieve XYZ.
And even though I've believed that story for a long time.
Even though I believed that story for a long time.
And I've been denying myself unconditional love.
And I've been denying myself unconditional love.
I still deeply and completely love, accept, and forgive myself.
Love, accept, and forgive myself.
And I'm done with this conditional love bullshit.
And I am done with this conditional love bullshit.
I am ready to love myself fully.
I am ready to love myself fully.
To pour out of my heart into my own heart.
To pour out of my heart into my own heart.
And I know I have so much love to give.
Oh, and I know I have so much love to give.
And I deserve to receive that love from myself.
And I deserve to receive that love from myself.
I'm so excited to be lit up by self-love.
I'm so excited to be lit up by self-love.
And I give myself full permission to receive it.
And I give myself full permission to receive it.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Take a deep breath in. Let it go. Maybe take a moment to close the eyes, have a little roll of the shoulders, feel into the body. And then I encourage you to check back in with yourself on that scale of 1 to 10. Hopefully you've shifted up towards 10, where you are fully, unapologetically loving yourself.
Yeah, I started at a 7. I checked in, and it's funny. I feel like a 12 or something.
Yeah!
And it's interesting, though. And like, I encourage you, everyone listening or watching, like, do it. Follow along. It's like this real beautiful tenderness and openness that I'm feeling inside. Like, it's like I want to cry, but in a good way. And
tears of love.
Yes. And the whole thing you were saying about, I mean, I know I am just like, fuck, that's what I'm here to do. I feel like that, like, I'm going to sound like a hippie, but like, I think that my purpose on this planet is just to love people. Like, that's what I do at the core, right?
I feel you.
Like I have just so much of that in my body, and the visualization of loving, pouring all of the love that I know I have back into my own heart is like overwhelming and like really a beautiful thing. You know,
because we're so quick to give it to other people, and then for whatever reason we're like, no, I don't deserve it. Like, we'll give other people our love, people who actually maybe don't deserve it, but then when we won't give it to ourselves. And it's
well, that was beautiful, Maria. Thank you so much. Like, this was such a fabulous conversation. And I just, especially in the beginning, want to be bringing in people who inspire me, who have impacted me, who I know have like a really beautiful message to give and have like a great support for this world. And you have like such a beautiful mission. And I'm so glad to know you. And I remember the first time I met you, I was like, oh God, I think I'm going to move to Lisbon. I'm going to force this girl to take my show.
Mission complete. Yeah.
It was like this funny intuition. We're having lunch and I was like, oh, too bad. She's got no choice. But I would love to, before we wrap things up, please, you have so many beautiful offerings. I know you do stuff online. I know you do stuff in person with everything. Please share how people can really have more of you in their lives. Tell us all the things.
Thank you. So, I mean, if you enjoyed the tapping and you want to have a tapping session, I do offer one-on-one tapping sessions. So just, even if you're not a business owner or whatever, like, it's just one-on-one tapping. And I'm sure.
And it could be anything, right?
Yeah.
It could be anything. You're stuck on anything, and you do it virtually and in person too, right?
Yeah.
So anyone all over the world.
Cool. And if you have any questions, if you're like, I'm not sure, can I tap on this? Like, my DMs are always open. So I'm always happy to have those conversations. To figure out like what would be helpful to tap on. So that's one thing. If you are a business owner, you want to come to Lisbon and expand your messaging, your reach, your impact, all those things, and you also want to have an excuse to like travel and come hang out with me and Liana in Lisbon.
Woo,
then that's my expand offering. That's a 5-day experience where we really get deep on what part of your PR strategy needs work to really get you to that level of visibility that you want to get to. And also, we also do tapping together. And then it's a bespoke itinerary too. So we get to include all the things you want to see in Lisbon, whether you want to go to the beach, go to Sintra, go surfing, all that stuff, because I find travel really opens up your mind to possibility and helps you see things, from a different point of view, which is really powerful. And then lastly, I am relaunching this group program that Liana completed. So by the time this is live, that will be live. And it's a 3-month experience online. It's an intimate group setting where I'll walk you through all the things you need to know to be your own publicist. And then there will, of course, also be tapping support, both group sessions and one-on-one sessions. And I really love doing this. I get to hold space for you to really step into your magic and really become confident in what you are doing. And getting the recognition you deserve and start landing press and getting on podcasts and all the good things. So if that's something you're interested in, you can apply. And again, you can always DM me. I love just connecting with people. So
where can they find you? Tell us. Website,
yes,
Instagram,
so
where are you hanging out?
BeConsciousPR.com, at BeConsciousPR on Instagram. I also have my personal account, which is more yoga tapping content, which is at maria.eilersen.
And you also have free videos, right? Tapping videos on YouTube?
Oh, yeah. I always forget this because it's so new. But yeah, I have a YouTube channel as well. So if you're like, let me just experiment a little bit more with tapping before I book a one-on-one session, I do have a YouTube channel, which is, I think it's youtube.com/@maria.eilersen.
Perfect.
But if you just put in my name into Google, I'm sure it'll come up.
Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. Thank you for being someone who's, really held space for me to move through some of my blocks, and it has encouraged me to, go out into the world and use my voice more. So thank you so much for doing what you love, because it's empowered me to do more of what I love. And
You're so welcome.
just thanks for taking the time, Maria.
Thank you for having me.